gonna make it. It wasn't supposed to go down like this.
You have no money. You have no savings.
You're not real chatty, are you?
I don't have anything to say.
Well, you're a beautiful girl from Eastern Europe, so that narrows down the possibilities.
I'm a product of juvenile detention and foster care, just like you. I got lucky though. I had a mentor in juvie. She saved my life.
I don't want to lose it, please. I don't want to lose anything. You're gonna pass through me like a hot potato. I'm so scared. Do you think you can be my mentor?
Absolutely.
Seen through a queer, emotionally grounded lens that centers women's lived realities rather than spectacle. Scene 3 of Prison Lesbian functions as the film's moral and emotional hinge, reframing the prison not only as a site of punishment, but as a place where cycles of neglect, care, repression, and fragile hope collide. And when taken together with the earlier scenes, it completes the movie's portrait of how queer women and other marginalized women are shaped, and often damaged, by systems that claim neutrality while reproducing profound inequities. The interaction between Dr. Sinn, a young prison physician, and Nikki, a three-strike offender with stress-triggered seizures, is quiet, procedural, and deliberately unglamorous, yet it carries an immense emotional charge precisely because it resists the familiar tropes of prison drama. Instead of violence or manipulation, what unfolds is recognition, the rare moment when two women see themselves reflected across institutional roles that are supposed to keep them separate. From the outset, the scene situates Nikki's body as a record of cumulative trauma rather than individual failure. Her seizures are not treated as inconveniences or disciplinary problems, but as symptoms that point backward to a childhood spent moving through foster care and juvenile detention, environments defined by instability and surveillance rather than safety. For queer audiences, particularly those who grew up without consistent affirmation or protection, Nikki's history resonates deeply, echoing the way many LGBTQ+ youth experience early contact with carceral systems not because of inherent criminality, but because poverty, rejection, and untreated trauma narrow the available paths to survival. Dr. Sinn's clinical questions gradually open into something more expansive, not because she crosses professional boundaries, but because she refuses the emotional distancing that prisons often demand of staff, and this refusal becomes an act of quiet resistance against a system that relies on dehumanization to function. When Sinn acknowledges Nikki's intelligence, her astonishing SAT scores achieved despite near-constant displacement, the film challenges the deeply ingrained cultural myth that incarceration is a natural outcome of lack of ability or effort, instead exposing how talent in marginalized women is routinely ignored or squandered until it manifests in ways the system deems punishable. For lesbians and queer women watching, this moment lands with particular force, as it mirrors the painful experience of knowing one's own potential, while being denied the resources, mentorship, or safety needed to realize it, and the resulting internal conflict between self-blame and systemic blame often becomes a defining emotional struggle. Sinn's revelation that she herself emerged from juvenile detention and foster care reconfigures the power dynamic between doctor and inmate without erasing. Offering a rare depiction of solidarity that does not collapse into savior narratives, she does not claim exceptional virtue, only luck and the intervention of a mentor, thereby underscoring the film's recurring theme that survival often depends less on moral worth than on whether someone at the right moment chooses to see you. This acknowledgement resonates powerfully within queer communities, where mentorship has historically functioned as an informal lifeline in the absence of institutional support, and where intergenerational connection remains both vital and fraught, shaped by the need to balance care with caution. Nikki's tentative request, "Do you think you could be my mentor?" is framed not as entitlement or transgression, but as a deeply human reaching out. A question born of scarcity rather than desire for advantage, and Sinn's immediate, unhesitating, absolutely affirms the film's belief in relational repair even within oppressive structures. Yet the scene's closing line, Nikki's quiet realization that this isn't right, complicates any reading of the moment as uncomplicated hope, suggesting an awareness of the structural limits surrounding their connection and the ethical tensions inherent in seeking care from within a system designed to contain rather than heal. This ambivalence is central to the film's queer emotional realism. Love, care, and recognition are possible, but they are never free from the context that constrains them. and queer women in particular are often forced to negotiate these contradictions without clear guidance. In the broader context of Prison Lesbian, Scene 3 dialogues with the earlier stories by offering a counterpoint to narratives of overt vulnerability and overt brutality, where Sarah's reckoning with privilege and Misha's impending deportation highlight how punishment operates across class and national lines. Nikki and Sinn's encounter illuminates how prisons also function as warehouses for unaddressed childhood trauma, disproportionately affecting women whose queerness, poverty, or nonconformity rendered them expendable long before they committed crimes. For women watching, regardless of sexual orientation, the scene speaks to a universal longing for someone to contextualize their pain rather than pathologize it, to say not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. A shift that feminist and queer critiques of the carceral state have long demanded. The film's insistence on centering women's emotional interiors challenges society's discomfort with seeing women express care for one another, outside of traditional familial or romantic frameworks. A discomfort that persists because such expressions threaten patriarchal assumptions that women's primary emotional labor should be directed toward men or children, not toward one another in ways that might foster autonomy or solidarity. In a prison setting, this discomfort is intensified, as any intimacy between women is often either eroticized for consumption or demonized as deviant, leaving little room for representations of care that are neither sexual nor selfless but simply human. By depicting a relationship rooted in shared history, mutual recognition, and cautious hope, Prison Lesbian disrupts these binaries, offering lesbian and LGBTQ+ audiences a reflection of their own experiences of connection forged under pressure, where emotional safety must be negotiated carefully and visibility carries risk. The criticism prisons receive, accusations that they perpetuate harm rather than reduce it, finds a poignant illustration here, as Nikki's seizures, triggered by stress, underscore how incarceration exacerbates the very conditions it claims to manage, and Sinn's limited ability to intervene reveals the constraints placed even on those who wish to help. Yet, the film does not lapse into nihilism. Instead, it suggests that within even the most punitive systems, moments of care can still matter, not because they redeem the institution, but because they affirm the humanity of those trapped inside it. For queer women, who have often had to build networks of care in hostile environments, from schools and workplaces to families and nations, the scene validates the emotional labor involved in surviving without guarantees, in finding meaning not in grand transformations, but in incremental acts of recognition. Nikki's brightness, Sinn's empathy, and the fragile bridge between them mirror the broader pressures queer women face to hide their pain, minimize their needs, or justify their desire for support. And by bringing these dynamics into focus without sensationalism, the film invites viewers to see lesbian connection not as spectacle or taboo, but as an ordinary, necessary response to extraordinary constraint. Ultimately, Scene 3 reinforces Prison Lesbian's central thesis that becoming visible, being seen accurately, compassionately, and without reduction, is itself a form of resistance, and that for women and LGBTQ+ audiences seeking authenticity, the truth of connection lies not in fantasy or escape, but in the difficult, imperfect work of recognizing one another within systems that were never designed to let them thrive.